Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Mind Bloom, the safe space at the intersection of mental health advocacy and breast cancer awareness. Mind Bloom is your podcast. Subscribe to hear more on female entrepreneurship and the juggling of family life, career goals, and romantic relationships. Not an easy task, especially if your physical and mental health need a big hug right now. Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Marina Gee, your host, and welcome to Mind Bloom, the podcast for all things mental health and breast cancer awareness. Before we dive into this week's episode, let me just say that Mind Bloom, the podcast, and the content at Mind Bloom U across all platforms is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always contact your providers for medical counsel. Never disregard any medical treatment or delay seeking professional help because of any content authored or distributed by Mind Bloom. Hi guys, hello. Welcome to episode 23 of Mind Bloom. This is probably month 5 already of Mind Bloom. Ooh, someone is getting old around here. Speaking of getting old, this is a crazy, rackety week for me and for so many of us. Not only is election day next Tuesday in the United States, and some are saying it's going to be election week, it's going to be election month, and I can only hope and meditate upon and pray that it will be short, quick, painless, a landslide, and that the next day we can all wake up and rejoice and take a deep breath and look at each other and say, oof, we made it. We voted for change. We voted for a fairer healthcare system. We voted for speedier and more just immigration law. We voted for a better environment, a more sustainable future. And we voted for courtesy, a Black woman as vice president who will, I'm sure, defend the rights of women, LGBTQ communities, and a cabinet who I'm sure would do everything to stand by Roe v. Wade and abortion law and rights and promote equality and fraternity amongst all the races and creeds and ages and genders that populate the United States. This country I chose to immigrate into a little over 7 years ago, and that I've learned to call home. So I know we're all feeling the anxiety. I, for one, have been baking like crazy and taking Bianca on extra walks. I'm also binging on the Great British Baking Show because that's all my brain will take at this time. Pure entertainment and sweetness and sugar all around, and nice people competing against each other, but nonetheless nice people, and just overall taking it easy. I haven't posted on Instagram both on Saturday and Sunday. I just didn't feel like it. I felt like taking a break from actually my phone and my laptop overall, which I did. And by the end of Sunday, I was perkier and more in tune with what was really going on inside of this brain of mine. But more things are happening this week, just in the space of 8 days. So much is happening. Friday is my birthday. Yay! Forget that Saturday is Halloween. It doesn't even matter. what is important is that I celebrate my birthday on Friday. Big piece of advice to my younger audience. As soon as this pandemic is over, go kiss everyone you like and everyone you don't like. Go tell people you love them and you like them and you fancy them. Go eat all the things, all the good things. Go take beach vacations. Forget about your jobs. And tell that narcissistic boss of yours that you've had it. You're not coming to work tomorrow. That is my advice to you. Because the 40s will come in a blink of an eye. You won't know what hit you, and all of a sudden, there you are. You're wearing progressive lenses. And that little streak of gray hair, it's now all over. And then you have like 3 wrinkles around your eyes and 1 on your forehead. The weight you put on your hips is staying there, I promise you. And so many more juicy things that I can't even wrap my finger around. So don't wait. Don't wait for your 40s. No, go have fun now, today. Well, not today because coronavirus, but, in 6 months, in a year's time. So this is my unsolicited piece of advice to my younger audience. Now to the older audience, what can I say? I am catching on. I will meet you in the hot flashes department soon enough. But not just yet, not just yet. Give me a few more years. And then there's something else happening between today and next Tuesday. I have to go in again for my 6-month follow-up exams, medical exams. Not excited about that. In fact, I'm frightened, nervous, on edge. I feel that the littlest, slightliest of things is going to trigger me and set me off because I don't want to go. I don't want to be called in to do further exams because they found something that they just want to make sure is nothing. I've heard that before. And it's not fun. But like I was saying in the beginning, a lot of baking is of the essence. A lot of resting. I hope I can be more thorough with my meditation. I slack so many times. I hate to say this, but it's true. And a lot of journaling and talking to myself like I would to my best friend. It's going to be okay. I'm here for you. Whatever it is that they tell you, whatever the results of the exams are, I'm here for you. We'll get through this. We'll stay together and we'll stay strong and indivisible. And we'll get through whatever obstacles we may encounter in our path. Let me know how you are coping with this crazy week. I know it's probably not your birthday, and I also understand that you're probably not having to go into Manhattan to a hospital to do all these nasty exams. But if you live in the US or if you live abroad and you're an American citizen, you are probably as much on edge as I am. But, it's probably okay to turn off CNN for an hour or two or just for a couple of days. It's okay to unplug, maybe turn off your phones as well. Maybe don't go on social media, especially Twitter these days. Twitter is on fire right now, of course. And brace yourself for what's coming. And, maybe Tuesday, you can devote Tuesday to be a highly stressful day. Because it will be so for an entire nation, whether you vote blue or red. But until Tuesday, try to take it easy, try to rest, take on knitting or crocheting or coloring or baking or podcasting. Reach out to your friends. Reach out to me. I'm always here for you. You know, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook and Pinterest at mindbloomu. You can look up my website. It's mindbloomu.com. You can send me an email to info@mindbloomu.com. You can check out my YouTube channel, Mindbloom's channel. It does not have yet a specific URL, so you'll have to type in Mindbloom and cross your fingers and hope for the best that you'll find this channel and not some other random Mindbloom, because who would even dare to use the same name as my podcast? And you can also, besides reaching out, you can also buy me a coffee. I keep forgetting to mention this, but I joined a program called Buy Me a Coffee. If you just Google Buy Me a Coffee and then look up Mind Bloom, you'll find me there. So basically, you go on there, you buy me a coffee for $3. And that's a kind way of supporting the show and saying you appreciate what I'm doing. I want to thank a big friend of mine who actually suffered an immense loss this weekend. But I want to thank her tremendously for buying me 2 coffees the other day. So thank you so much. My guests today are 2. They are Woodward and Victoria Goldberg, and they are both affiliated with Share Cancer Support, as well as with TalkMets, Helpline, and with the podcast Our MBC Life. Our MBC Life is a podcast made by and made for metastatic breast cancer patients. In other words, the podcast explores life with metastatic or stage 4 breast cancer from the perspective of people living with the disease. The goal and the wishes of our MBC Life is to give a voice to breast cancer patients and to share realities, to divulge information, spread awareness, and not unlike with mental health, debunk the myths and the stigma around living with metastatic disease. So the topic is serious, is scary, is ultimately, by definition, the unknown and everything we're all scared about. But Victoria and Anne make it so lively. They're so generous with their time, with their knowledge. They're so giving and so supportive of the breast cancer community. They volunteer their time to answer the phone calls of folks with early stage breast cancer. And Victoria starts the interview by saying that LCIS and DCIS are the cases and the diagnoses that warrant the larger amount of phone calls. Go figure. So stick around. I promise you, you will love this interview. You will learn so much, especially that the kindness of human beings is indeed infinite, sees no borders, no colors, no political parties, no social strata. So Victoria and Anne will be right after this. Guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Turns out it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. It will also distribute your podcast for you so that everyone can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast and many, many more. And guess what? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. not for me. I almost sometimes wish that this was clearer, that, that I knew what I was dealing with. But I don't want people to think that I'm putting on like taking advantage of it. Anyway, this is like imposter syndrome all over the that I mentioned, anxiety.
Why would anybody ever pretend to have a disease? I don't get that at all.
But let me tell you, at Share, we have a helpline for early stage breast cancer women, and we get more calls from women with LCIS and DCIS than any other stage of cancer, because it's most really misunderstood or not understood type of precancerous condition. Yeah. So it's not at all surprising that you have so many questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right, so welcome to Mind Bloom, Anne and Victoria. I'm so excited to have you and to put a name to a face. I would like to start by asking you what makes your mind bloom.
Actually, Anne and people like her, people that I met along the way with metastatic breast cancer, it has enlarged my universe so much. I have gotten to know so many incredible women that I would have never, ever, ever had a chance to meet along the way. And it's amazing. And working with Anne on this podcast, and Anne and I also work on the Helpline together. It's an extremely rewarding experience, and it makes me want to wake up in the morning and get things done, which is not always easy when you have metastatic breast cancer.
Of course, yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And I'll want to talk more about that and the sense of community and all of that you get from our MBC life. But please, Anne, go ahead.
I completely echo Victoria. This is not a diagnosis that you expect to get, want to get. I was a de novo diagnosis, so it was stage 4 from the beginning. So having met so many of the people in the community and the support and the knowledge sharing and just the general, we're here for each other, does make my mind bloom. And also just, constantly learning and constantly being engaged and finding things that bring you, your sense of value and a sense of contributing. Always, make the day better.
Yeah. And it is a day by day process for all of us and for mental health as well. We just have to show up, I guess, for that one day and take a step and see what happens, and then take the other step. Isn't it almost like that?
Well, I've heard a lot of people say that the pandemic is giving them a sense of what life with a terminal disease is like, the unknowing, the loss of control. I think Dr. Lynn talked about that in the episode she did with us, that it's made her more empathetic, sort of that just kind of, you don't know what tomorrow is going to look like or the next day. And that's life with metastatic disease. And so this time of pandemic has been interesting from that perspective because it's caused a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And it's absolutely right. The way we face our cancer was very similar. We also lost our jobs that we valued very much. Anne may talk to you about her job, but it was important to us. So we had to redefine ourselves after the diagnosis, and living with this fear of an unknown is probably similar to what a lot of people are experiencing now with coronavirus.
I know. So let's step back a little bit, because I know a little bit about you, but the people at home probably don't, right? So could we have a little...
Well, they can listen to the last podcast and they can get to know us.
So let's just skip this part. All right. Yes, you're right. Guys, do what Victoria's saying and go listen to our MBC Live. It really is amazing. It's tremendous.
But what do you really want to know, Marina? We'll tell you.
We'll tell you. So I want to know how you met each other, how our MBC life came to be, as well as your helpline, all of that, all of the things, all the activism, all the advocacy and awareness you've been doing, and a little bit of your personal story, how you came to this diagnosis as well.
Yeah. So to start from the beginning, I was 43 years old when I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. It was almost the same stage as you, a little bit more advanced. It was stage 1. Yeah. And I had the usual treatments with early stage diagnosis when it's a very aggressive disease. And I had my chemo and mastectomy. Maybe it's too much information, but I had that. And then I moved on with my life. I continued to work in investment banking. Yeah. And for the next 9 years, I really, truly forgot about cancer. People say that you never do, but some people actually do. People move on. Okay. And after a few years, I truly thought that was something in my past. It was an experience that I had to experience, and I moved on. But 9 years to the day, I was re-diagnosed now with stage 4 cancer, which is a metastatic terminal type of breast cancer, the only type of cancer that unfortunately kills. And so that was a really scary moment that lasted about 2 years. And then after 2 years, when I realized that I'm not dead and I'm doing fairly well, I thought, okay, so now what am I going to do with my life? I can't just live for the sake of my cancer. It has to be more than that. So I was very lucky to have found a support group in New York City where I met a woman who was very active at Share Cancer Support. That's a nonprofit organization here in New York. And I harangued and asked her for I don't know how long to introduce me to the folks at Share, and she did. And I started working at Share's. At that time, we had a helpline for all breast cancer survivors. And, fairly early on, I realized that we really needed our own forum, because even though the cancers are called the same, they're not really the same. There are different characteristics, different troubles, different problems, different treatments. Everything is not quite the same. And Share was very helpful in letting me start the metastatic helpline. And over time, I got people to help me out run it, because I could never do it myself. And answered the call, and she came and she joined me 2 years ago? Was it, Anne? Less than that?
About a year, just over a year, I think.
Feels like 2. And we got to know each other. I'm just so thrilled that I got to know Anne. And then Lisa, who started our MBC Live, the podcast, is a friend from that support group who gave me the start at Share. And that was her idea. She started with webinars at Share, but she felt that was not the right type of medium, and she wanted to do something different. And podcast was it turns out. And Share was, they were pretty responsive to our idea. And so here we are. And she recruited Anne and many other people, and now we have people who just want to be part of it, right? Now the word is out, and we're getting people who just want to help us out, and it's the most amazing group of women, and we have a man as well.
Yeah, well, and it's the metastatic community is really pretty amazing, and I found Victoria through just a post on a Facebook page of one of the biggest names in our community, a huge advocate and supporter of people, and had just posted something about, they're looking for volunteers. And it was something that, was attractive to me in terms of my career was all about working with people and personal relationships. And so getting to talk to people who are going through similar things and who just want hope. When I was diagnosed, like I said, I was diagnosed de novo, which means no early stage breast cancer, frankly, I'd never spent a night in a hospital. So the idea that I had all of a sudden a really serious illness was stunning to me. And I did what Victoria talked about from an early stage perspective. My goal was simply to go back to my career, my job, my life, and, get treated and figure this out. And after about 2 years of doing that in a pretty stressful occupation, the treatment and the health and the job, they just don't play nice together anymore. But so what Victoria said resonates with me, because I guess I still have value and I can still provide value. I just can't do it in the way that I used to do it. And I have to put my health as my priority. And the nice thing about the podcast and the team that we're putting together is because we all have metastatic disease, we get it. Hey, I can't do anything today. I'm fatigued. Hey, I have a scan tomorrow. I've got to go do this. We have people who have had progressions in the 6 weeks that we're on the podcast together. So we have to have a large team and we have to have a supportive team, because it's not a job. Yeah. It's something we're doing while we're trying to live with cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it was great what you both actually touched on the same thing, which is despite your diagnosis, you're allowing the disease to define you, right? Yes. You are more than that, and you miss your jobs, and I know. And yeah, it's an amazing career. I heard you saying that this was the first election.
Yeah, that I haven't been on. When you have a career, I didn't even call it a job. I mean, I started in my career in television news production when I was 22, and it was really it was my life. It was 24/7. It was all encompassing. It's how I met my husband. It's where I made my friends. When you move to a new city, when you're just out of college and you don't know anybody and you're working at 3 a.m, those become your friends for life. And one of the hardest decisions for me since my diagnosis was making the decision to leave work. I simply couldn't do it. I was not doing myself any favors, my health any favors at all. And what my husband would say is, your only job is to stay healthy. Your only job is to, give the medication every chance of success. But making that decision, choosing and recognizing that there can be life after that. I used to say to my husband, there has to be something between work and dying. Right? I can't just work until I start dying. There has to be something in the middle. And finding that has been good. It's been hard. It's been an adjustment. And I know that you focus a lot on mental health here at Mind Bloom. And, when your world is shaken like that and you have to make those big decisions, I mean, it takes a toll. It really does.
Are you kidding? Of course. Yeah.
Well, unlike Anne, I had a job. Even though I guess some people would consider it a career, and I've done fairly well, but I was never passionate about it. I liked what I did. I liked my accomplishments. I liked, to be frank, the pay, but I was not committed to it. So when I left the job itself, I was not heartbroken over losing my career. I was heartbroken over being defined as what I had defined myself for a long, long time as, a career woman, a person who made money, made decisions. All of a sudden, it was all about the disease. So in some ways, and if you can talk about silver linings, having found my new passion is really important to me. And it's certainly more than volunteer job. It's a career. Actually, I consider this a new career.
And Victoria does so much for all of us. I mean, the reason that we're all here, that we're all part of the podcast is sort of the work that she has done with Share in the community. She knows everyone. And it is, she is passionate about this, and she is passionate about the Helpline, and she is passionate about helping women. She's launching a new support group in September. She's going to facilitate 2 more support groups. This is a woman who believes in all of us and helping us live our best lives. And we're also lucky to have found her and everybody. And that's one of the things about, again, I didn't have early stage, so I was never in the sort of movement that exists in that world of community and survivorship. and finding community as a metastatic patient. It's just the number of times I talk to a woman who says, I just don't know anybody who has this. I don't have anyone to talk to. It's just, they're there. You just have to know where to find them. They're in your community, but nobody, they're not talking about it at their church or their school or their whatever. But they're there for people to find, and we want to connect them.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
and to tell you a very interesting story that actually it's one of those things. We have one of our.
I'll tell it. I'll just tell it very anonymously. But I had Victoria brings all the volunteers together once a month, or we have a training, and we always introduce ourselves every time, even if we know each other, and say something. And one of the women was talking about a support group that she had launched in her local community that had gone virtual. And I had a new caller shortly after that who was looking for support. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll let her know that in her community, there's a support group that started. Well, it turns out these two people know each other. And when I connected them through a metastatic connection, they actually knew each other from their community. And it was so just fulfilling to just link people together who might not have found each other were it not for the helpline, were it not for whatever. There's a lot of support groups, lots of different places people can find community. But it was just such a neat thing for me to have just heard a nugget in a telephone call about somebody doing something and be able to connect that to a person over here. It's
a small world.
It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's getting smaller and smaller now, surprisingly, right?
I know.
Over these new ways.
Technologies. Yeah. I speak with people from Sydney with no trouble at all. Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to one of my best friends recently, and who lives near me, but we don't get to see each other. And it's almost like the pandemic has equalized all of your friendships. The people who are far away, maybe I'm talking to a bit more because they were home, and you're Zooming and you're doing these things. And the people who live nearby, you see less because you can't see them. And it's sort of, it's a weird phenomenon.
It really is.
It doesn't matter if your friend is 5 minutes away or 500 miles away. They're the same now.
It really is. Yeah. Talk about democracy.
A lot of my friends would tell you that I'm one of those women who lunch. I love lunches. I love meeting friends outside and eating and chatting. And so for me, this coronavirus was a huge loss. But over time, you find, as Anne said, you get to see people you hadn't seen in years. So, it is an equalizer. It really is.
Yeah. Anybody on the 28th floor? I mean, you're Victor, aren't you on the 28th floor of your building?
On the 28th floor, and we have so many people move out that half of my floor is empty. Wow. It's crazy. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. People are moving out from New York. Yeah. Yeah. I resisted, but I don't know for how long.
You're still here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still in Brooklyn. Yeah. We saw it all.
My son too. My son lives in Brooklyn.
Nice. Give me a few tips, if you have any, about coping with mental health and with a day that doesn't go as well. Or are there any, what do you do? I guess that's my...
what do you do? I think you have to give yourself permission to have emotion and to feel loss and to feel grief and whatever it is in that day. In the first 6 months to a year of my diagnosis, I probably cried every day. Yeah. Because it made me feel better. It's how I got something out. I think that making sure you take time to do things you love is important, to enjoy life. It's one of the things I've been trying to do since I stopped working, is make sure that I spend time with family and friends and do the things that bring me joy, and also give myself permission to be scared and then try to put that, in its appropriate place. Because even though you're metastatic, every single one of us is at a different point in our disease and our treatment and our mobility and our physically, and, every cancer and every person are so unique and so different. But I think you have to let yourself feel. Let yourself recognize that you still have a life. It doesn't define you.
too. What about you, Victoria?
So I was going to give a very flip answer. The drugs.
Sorry, Victoria, did I make it too serious?
Drugs help me, which is true. True, when you medicate yourself, that helps a lot. So I started taking antidepressants, surprisingly, not because I was depressed, which I think I was, but I did not realize that at the time. The reason I started taking antidepressants was because I have a condition called peripheral neuropathy, which affects your nerve endings. And there have been some studies done that showed that taking small dose of antidepressant helps with peripheral neuropathy. So I happily agreed to do it. And I've been taking them for a very long time now, for almost 7 years. And there was such a subtle difference that I didn't realize. It helped me tremendously with my mood swings and with being able to actually manage the reaction to changes and anxiety. I've had quite a bit of it. And it was very helpful, but there is always a backside to every story. And I had not really given it my thought until recently. And recently, I watched this Australian show where one of the characters who was clinically depressed and taking antidepressants said that she really wants to get off them because she always feels beige. And I thought that was such an incredible way to define it, because that's exactly what it is. When you are on antidepressants, you feel beige. You feel the same as when my son got married last year. I felt great, but not the way I would have felt had I not been on antidepressants. I lost a very, very close friend a couple of months ago, and I felt exactly the same way. So now I question what is better, to have the anxiety under control or not feel beige and feel the feelings that it's good to feel. It's good to feel the loss and the grief and be happy when your son gets married. So yes, when people decide to make serious decisions about medication, that's something to think about.
It's not always said.
Yeah, and this is a question we ask every guest on our podcast, because whether they're a doctor or an advocate or whoever's on the podcast, they're all dealing with a lot right now. And it's something that has been, I don't want to say surprising, but almost all of them talk about being in therapy, which I think is a wonderful thing to share. They've all talked about the role of therapy in their own mental health. And they also all talk about sort of something I said, which is, take time for yourself, self-care, do things you enjoy. I read an article recently that said, as a cancer patient, how do you pamper yourself? I said, pamper myself? That's not pampering. That's self-care. That's part of your treatment. That's part of staying healthy. Is wrapping up those things that bring you joy, that make you feel better, whether it's a creative outlet or journaling or being in nature. We call camping part of my treatment plan, right? Yep. Being in nature is an essential part of my treatment plan. And so I was so struck when I read that article and they called it pampering. I'm like, it's not pampering.
Yeah, that shift that shift in paradigm still needs to happen. That it isn't pampering. It's not a hot bath. No, it's more than that.
How you make your joints feel better.
Right. Exactly. But let me just say, Victoria, I'm very thankful and Anne as well that you were putting together this discourse about therapy and medicine and antidepressants, because on Mind Bloom, I'm very candid about it. And I, as someone who wants to break down the stigmas as much as possible, I am an advocate for therapy, for psychiatry, for antidepressants, or whatever it is that helps you live the life you deserve, I guess. And totally comprehend the feeling of beigeness you're talking about. I have been as well on meds for over 5 years. But look, at this point, I'm not still in a place where I would think, no, I want to feel all the feelings. No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm still, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm talking the talk, but I'm certainly not going to walk any walk at this point.
No, and it's great to acknowledge and to speak up. Speak up. How many people have you met in your lives who say openly that they're on meds or they see a psychiatrist, right?
Absolutely.
And I come from a country that's very traditional, very Catholic, and people, psychiatrists serve for crazy people. And I'll hide this. This is a secret. No one really knows.
I come from a country where they say therapists.
Yeah.
What, you have your friends. Those are your therapists. You don't need to pay somebody to listen to you.
Yeah, but your friends aren't very objective, probably.
Absolutely not. It's not at all the same thing. Absolutely not.
No, it's not.
You burden your friends, actually. Even setting aside the objectivity of your friends, you don't want to burden your friends all the time.
Absolutely.
It's not fair to them either.
Let me ask you another question. Popped up as you were speaking. We talked about your mental health, and you're taking care of yourselves, and your main obligation is to stay healthy and take care of your health. What about your family and your loved ones, and your kids, your husbands? What about their mental health? Do you have anything to say to that? Is this a silly question?
No, not at all.
Oh, it's not a silly question at all. Victoria, you
at all.
Kick us off.
So I have 2 sons. They're adults now. One is 25 and the other one is 30. My youngest son is a fashion designer. I always love to put it in anywhere because I'm so proud of what he does.
Yeah.
And in my family, we've had issues with mental health and depression, and the diagnosis brings out the worst. Especially the terminal diagnosis. I think sometimes it's harder on the family than on us because we know exactly what we need to do. They don't. They want to help us, and they don't know how. They don't know what the right thing to say is and what the wrong thing to say is. It's very, very hard to navigate, and often they've forgotten as well, It's all about you and your disease and not their needs. Of course, my youngest son would agree with that, but, for the most part, it's true. And it's very, very difficult. And, at SHARE, we have a support group for caregivers, and I wish more people would join them because it really is difficult. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's we don't have children, and we live far away from our families, so it's an interesting thing because our families, obviously know what's happening with me, but they weren't here, and they aren't here. Like when I went through chemotherapy, my husband, sort of did everything for me with that. But I think, when it comes to families, understand where they are and what they need at a given time. I mean, I know that there are days and weeks where it's just not a topic that we want to talk about because there's nothing to talk about. Okay. Right. So it's putting it appropriately in your relationship, in your life, giving it the time and the bandwidth it needs when it deserves it, when you're having scans or your treatment's not going well or you're physically not well. And then other times, putting it's here and we know it's here, but we're going to, continue and live our life. And, like with my mom, I try not to talk about it too much because there's no point in stressing her out when there's no new news, right? It's status quo, Mom. So we're good. Just keep going and trying to help them, understand. And a lot of it's education in my family because again, we didn't have any experience with breast cancer. So just trying to explain to people what it was and what it meant. I mean, we didn't tell anybody except our parents for the first month because we didn't want to answer questions we didn't have answers to. We were so absolutely in shock and not, if you'd asked me then, would I be here today? My answer would be no, I would not, because that's what I thought. And so knowing how much people can handle too, to some degree, and when it's right to talk about things. And that's different for everybody. And for every person who goes through this, the decisions they make about how much to tell their kids, when to tell their kids, how to talk about it. If you're doing well on a treatment, it doesn't have to be front and center. It's another question we ask a lot of our guests with kids, and young kids in particular, is how have you processed this with your kids? How are you talking about it with your kids? And every conversation is different. And it's so unique, but you can take something away from every one of those conversations to think about and to build into your own life and your own communication. But it's families, they have the same stress. And what I would say is, in my experience, they try not to show it to me. So I don't always know what they're thinking and what they're going through because they don't want to put that on me. So sometimes I get surprised. I'll hear a nugget or something will come up and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. That's what you're thinking. And so you have to keep that in mind my husband and my family in particular try and protect me from those things, thinking I have enough to worry about myself. And sometimes that's good. And sometimes I wish I knew more about what they were thinking.
Like Ann, I have a problem. I'm an only child. So I always thought that at some point I would take care of my parents. And my parents are still living. But it's changed dramatically after my diagnosis. So I actually worry now about not being here. And that's a very big burden both on me and on my parents. And it's hard. It really is. So you have to strike a balance on how to deal with the elderly, because they can't really handle everything. And at the same time, they want to. So it's difficult. You got to find a way to keep them abreast, but not frighten them unnecessarily.
Tell me about, I heard on your podcast, this great term I'd never crossed my mind of calling, the pandemic and this whole lockdown situation, the bubble, or your bubble.
Oh, my bubble.
Exactly. So tell me more about that. I know you were having a rough time with that the other day.
Well, so I'm on a medication that suppresses my immune system. And it drives it pretty low. And a lot of women are on this medication. This is nothing special in terms of it's a standard of care for ER positive breast cancer, and it suppresses your immune system. And so, pre-COVID, it was sort of just like, you just weren't aware of it, right? I didn't radically change my life. Like I said, I was still working for a period of time. I started wearing a mask on planes and maybe not touching handrails and always having
hand sanitizer.
Thank you. With me. But in this pandemic world, when you don't really know what could happen and you're at a higher risk, we call it being in our bubble. And when everybody was quarantining, it was great. Everybody was in the bubble. Yeah. Wave at the neighbors across the fence, everybody was in the bubble. And as my state came out of quarantine, and just being out, driving one day and just seeing literally throngs of people out in the park on a gorgeous day in the spring. I think I started crying in my car because I just thought I was in my bubble, but I can't go do that. I cannot be out like that. I'm not going to take those risks with my life, and my husband won't take those risks with my life. Mm. So it was like in that moment, I felt more isolated than I did during the quarantine. Mm-hmm. And that has continued because we simply don't take those risks. I think I made a joke the other day that I've been in 5 physical buildings since March 17th. And that's my doctor's, my home, and a couple other homes. I haven't been in a store. I haven't been anywhere where there's, more than 3 or 4 people. And that's mind blowing to think about when can that change? Because I simply won't take those risks.
Yeah. And you shouldn't. Yeah.
But I have to tell you, driving down that street and looking at that park, I'd never felt so. I think that's the most alone I'd felt since my diagnosis. Even when I was first diagnosed, I didn't feel that isolated.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird.
I remember when I was first diagnosed many, many years ago. It's not related to coronavirus, but I had the diagnosis and I went out with some very close friends for dinner. And I was sitting there, and then it hit me exactly the same thing. I've never felt as alone as I did at that moment. I saw all these people around me living their lives, and here I was with this diagnosis. And it's probably similar to that. I felt so incredibly alone.
Yeah. You almost get out of your body and see.
It was that sort of experience. Like, really.
Yeah. It's like the only time I can think of in my 4.5 years with this diagnosis where I actually looked around me and thought that's not the life I can have. And that was it was so surreal. It was just such a moment.
Yeah.
Would you agree with me that your podcast, and I guess the other volunteer work you do as well around MBC, is like therapy, and is a cure in and of itself, and just the community and the reaching out and informing others? For me, it is a little bit, but I would like to hear it from you.
It definitely is for me. When I left my job, I thought for a long time about what it was that I loved most about what I did. And it was my connection and making connections with people at a personal level. And so while I don't have a lot of time in my post-career world, because I do suffer from a lot of fatigue from my medication, I wanted to make sure that where I had energy and where I could spend time was in making connections and helping people at the closest level I could get to them. So, and that is therapy for me, because when I'm talking to somebody on the helpline, it keeps me in perspective. It gives me hope. It gives me inspiration. And some days you hang up the phone and it's exhausting and you have to take a break and process everything you just heard. But when you talk to somebody who's newly diagnosed and you go back to that place that you were at and you can offer some element of hope. I remember the very first person I spoke to who had metastatic disease after my diagnosis. And she helped me greatly in just that short time I had with her, to start to get some perspective, to start to get some hope. And then I had someone else a couple months later who had lunch with me, and I've long credited her with sort of being my turning point of getting my brain from I'm going to die to, oh, wait, okay, maybe there's more here. Maybe there's a life here. It might be a different life than I thought and more difficult. I don't know. I don't know what my other life was going to bring me. Yeah. But it's a different life, and it's still a good life. I still love it. I love my life and my family and my friends and what I get to do. And so getting to do those things is very helpful. It's again, part of the treatment plan, right? It's taking care of your mental health. I haven't found support groups work for me. I haven't found therapy works for me. Mm-hmm. Everybody's different. So this is something that works for me to take care of me.
It's great.
Same with me. Everything Anne said, exactly the same. When the helpline was the first thing for me that actually gave me meaning. And it's absolutely true. When we talk to a newly diagnosed person, I mean, you can kind of relate to this, because when you heard that you have this thing that you have no idea where it came from and what it is, it's so important to find somebody who can talk to you and explain to you and let you know that it's not the end of the world, that there is something after that. And it's a two-way street, We help them and they help us. Yeah. It is emotionally taxing, and as Anne said, sometimes you just feel so exhausted, but there are those days when it just lifts you up.
It's the remedy, I guess, would be two things for me. It's time to process and giving yourself time to mourn, to process, to grieve, to sleep it off, and talking. And that's why I think the podcast is almost synonymous to therapy, in the sense that you are talking, you are verbalizing and putting a name to these nasty things that are almost taboo in other, even in our previous lives. I think I've said the word breast cancer more now, than in my entire lifetime. And I guess that's something I want, that it can become normal to talk about, and to so that in face of a diagnosis or the diagnosis of a relative, we have the language.
Yeah,
we never really will, probably 100%, but that we have a little bit of knowledge, and we can access and have empathy, I guess, for what's going on.
no, I think it's very important what you do. I think it's a therapy for you, as you said, for sure. But it's very, very important to your listeners, and just continue doing it. It's a very, very good thing to do.
Thank you. Wow, that means a lot. And so is yours. So is your podcast. It's unbelievable to have stumbled upon you. Social media, talk about the small world, right? Here we are.
Oh man, social media, that's been a learning curve. That's been fascinating. But Lisa Lodico, who was the brainchild behind this, and she really felt and did a lot of research that there was nobody in the space, sort of, patients talking with patients. There's lots of advocates, there's lots of things out there, but there aren't that many patient-driven podcasts, patient-driven education. There's a lot of patient-driven advocacy, an amazing amount. It's done incredible work and advancements for us with research and relationships with scientists. But Lisa saw a real opportunity here. And I think the first several podcasts have shown that, that there is a conversation to be had. And we literally, as Victoria said earlier, we literally have had guests say, hey, can I be on the team? So we started, I think, Victoria, when we started, we were 4 people, and now we're like 10.
There were 4 middle-aged white women, youngish middle-aged white women. And now look at us. We're as diverse as this country.
Yeah. And that's something else I wanted to talk about, just to wrap up. We have to wrap up. But your work with disparities in healthcare, and the candid way you started one of the episodes by saying, look, we get it. We're privileged. We're white. We get it. We also, and I think you also said we needed a little bit of time to learn how to talk about these things, but we've taken that time, and here we are now with the statistics and the numbers and the dates and all of that. And then you bring on fabulous guests who can speak to Black and African American communities. So, I mean, your show is just like respect. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, we want to do more of that, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a one and done. It was important to us to bring a male metastatic breast cancer patient onto the team, even though Share itself, our nonprofit that supports us, focuses on women. We felt it was important to make sure that we were diverse, and because there are disparities in that. And so whatever it is, we want to highlight it. We want to highlight underserved communities. We want to highlight underserved parts of our cancer. We want to highlight the disparity in research, the disparity in clinical trials with women with, patients with brain mets, or Black patients who don't have access to trials, or whatever it is. So it takes all of us to help highlight those things. We don't have all the answers. We don't know all the things that need to be talked about, but having people like the 3 Black docs on was incredible. Members of our team who are so active in this area, like Shantae Randall and Sheila McGlone, who are launching initiatives left and right. I don't know how, I can't keep up with them.
I know. It's amazing. They have like 48 hours, like that thing. Harry Potter.
Yeah, they have like 3 days every one day.
I have a feeling they have that watch from Harry Potter, because I don't know how they do what they do in a 20.
No, I don't either. So it's something we're really striving to do, and we take our role in that pretty seriously. But as Lisa said in that podcast, we're also a bunch of we're a bunch of volunteer patients trying to do something helpful, and we hope we hit the mark.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can only grow, and it can only get better, and it can only get more amazing. No, it is unbelievable. Such a great work.
Well, come along for September. We're going to talk about funding and research and why there needs to be more, and who's doing a lot of work in that area. And we're talking to people from BCRF, from the DOD, which has a breast cancer research group, which blew my mind when I found that out, the Department of Defense. We're going to talk with lobular breast cancer. We have so much we have more stuff percolating than we have pod space for. So it's going to be pretty exciting.
I would say that Anne has said somewhere that our podcast is really not, even though we say it's for people with metastatic breast cancer, the fact is it's really more than that. It's for everyone. We discuss issues that are probably close. If we don't talk to doctors, we talk about things that are very close to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And cancer is very close to everyone. One way or another.
Hopefully, not to the extent that we go into, but yeah.
Keep it up. I mean, it's amazing. It is an amazing platform for everyone, like you were saying. Absolutely. Men, women, all the colors and creeds alike. Absolutely. It was a pleasure to have you. An honor, a pleasure. I could speak for hours with you.
Thanks, Marina. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you publicizing us, and you're doing great work, as Victoria said. And it's a joy to listen to you every week, kind of talk about where you are and where you're at in your own space.
My own space, my own bubble. I know.
We all have our own bubble, and it's important.
Why not, right? Why not be a little bit self-indulgent here and there? It's like, hey, I got no one else to talk to, just a dog. So, all right, ladies, thank you so much. I look forward to
Thanks, Marina.
Seeing and hearing more of you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Was our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to take away some useful tips and tools to use in your own life. Don't forget to subscribe to Mind Bloom the podcast anywhere you stream your podcasts, and please leave a message on the Anchor FM voicemail if you have any questions or comments for me. Also, please leave a review on the Apple Podcasts app. That would help the podcast reach more people. That would be great. Follow Mind Bloom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at MindBloomU, and check out my website, mindbloomu.com. Don't forget, a new episode every Tuesday. I look forward to spending time with you again next week. Be well and stay blessed. Bye-bye.